I'm Dr. Connie. I'm your host of Mind Your Health podcast. I share my unique perspective both as a practitioner and a patient battling autoimmune condition for over 25 years because I had to figure things out on my own, and my education in my practical approach as a patient allows me to truly integrate it so that you can be whole and the burden of sick care is no longer your own burden to carry. And this is what we help you with in this podcast.
Hey guys, it's Dr. Connie. Today I really want to talk to you guys about really demystifying your weight gain and attributing it and connecting it to your hormones. Because many women, mid 30s and beyond, are considered sort of perimenopause. Then we hit menopause and beyond. And those are some rocky, slippery slopes. As the phases change, we become empty nesters, and then we have to take care of our aging parents. There's a lot of identity crisis that might go on. On top of that, we have physiological differences or changes in our body that makes us feel not like ourselves. So all these can contribute to stress levels, thereby affecting your overall hormones. And then many women sort of blame their menopause and hormone imbalances. They know, but we don't really know what specifically is the culprit. So that's what I want to demystify today, because the interplay between hormones, weight gain, stress, and inflammation is super complex and multifaceted. And there is a structured explanation focusing on stress, which links it to the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, also known as HPA axis, and inflammation. So let's talk a little bit about the connection between the stress and HPA axis. So there's an activation of the hypopituitary adrenal axis due to the stress perception. So when I say perception, it's the thoughts around our circumstances that creates this stress level. So it's the perceptive thing. It's not a real life-threatening thing, right? It's what we think about the current circumstances that is so bad that can wreak havoc in our physiology in that way by increasing the hormonal levels or offsetting and dysregulating, however way you want to look at it. So stress is perceived by the brain, specifically the hypothalamus. And it's important to note that our interpretation of our world and the circumstances can cause us to alarm our nervous system as a threat and create a trigger of reactions in the body. So stress can be thinking that creates the feelings that can cause stress. And from the stress state, we don't make the smartest decisions and choices, especially around food. We all know this, right? So I just want you to think about it and park it in the back of your head. And then there's the cortisol release. The hypothalamus releases corticotropin releasing hormone. It's also CRH, which signals the pituitary gland to then release adrenocorticotropic hormone, ACTH. And then ACTH signals the adrenal glands to release cortisol. This is important because cortisol is linked to weight gain. So, cortisol and weight gain, how does that play into it? Well, cortisol is a glucocorticoid which impacts glucose metabolism and promotes gluconeogenesis in the liver. And that is the storage of glucose that comes in. So fat gets deposited because of cortisol. It can influence fat deposition, particularly in the abdominal area. As for the appetite, stress and elevated cortisol can enhance appetite and cravings for high calorie foods like high sugar, high fat, whatever that is, right? Second is it's important to really look at inflammation and weight gain as well, because When we think about inflammation, it's such a general statement, but weight gain links to inflammation because of the adipose tissue. Adipose means fat tissue deposits. And when you gain weight, adipose tissue can secrete pro inflammatory cytokines, which are chemicals in the body like TNF alpha and IL-6 specifically, which are very pro inflammatory. That's coming from your fat tissue, is why it's so bad, right? And then also the diet, high intakes of sugars and unhealthy fats due to cortisol rise and you're craving those foods can also promote inflammatory pathways. So let's talk about inflammation then with the hypopituitary HPA axis. So there's a feedback disruption in chronic inflammation states because that disrupts the negative feedback mechanism that regulates the HPA axis, potentially impacting your cortisol production and secretion to the adrenals. And inflammation, if it's persistent, then can interfere with insulin signaling, which is made out in your pancreas when you eat meals, and then contribute to insulin resistance. So, insulin is the most pro inflammatory hormone in the body. And when you have surplus and then you have high glucose levels, that's insulin resistance in a nutshell. And that causes people to gain weight by depositing adiposity into your fat cells, especially around the middle. And then there's what's called the visceral fat. As skinny as you may be, your fat might be around your viscera, like around your organs, around your guts, around your liver, fatty liver, around your kidneys, so to speak, right? And it is linked to cortisol induced fat deposition and also secretes inflammatory cytokines, which can perpetuate insulin resistance. So, this is what I mean by interplay and the complexity, right? Because now cortisol from adrenals, insulin from pancreas, it has a simultaneous impact. Elevated cortisol from chronic stress and resultant disruptions to insulin activity can co-contribute to weight gain. It's like a no-win situation, right? We now have to consider your sleep quality, stress, as well as your weight, because it can disrupt your sleep. Stress and altered cortisol rhythms can disrupt sleep. This is scientific. And weight gain can be due to disrupted sleep and potentially through the mechanisms like altered leptin and ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone levels. And when it's in excess, people are usually more hungry. And when your body's sleepy and its efforts to wake it up, it puts more high sugar foods so that it can readily use for energy. But in fact, you have insulin resistance. So you're actually adding fuel to the fire, so to speak. And then there's the mental health aspect, which affect your behavioral patterns. Stress and cortisol can impact mental health, potentially influencing behaviors like your eating patterns, stress eating, for example, and reducing motivation for physical activity. So, what are the implications of all of this? Well, it's a metabolic syndrome risk. The trio of chronic stress, inflammation, and weight gain can elevate the risk for metabolic syndrome characterized by insulin resistance, dyslipidemia, which is elevated lipids in your blood, hypertension, and abdominal obesity. So, how does this affect our whole world, global health impact, right? Well, beyond the metabolic health, these interactions impact cardiovascular health, mental health, and overall quality of life. So, understanding the complex interplay between stress, hormone axes, and inflammation and weight gain is crucial for developing a holistic management strategies that you get to employ every single day or deploy every single day. Because these are all things you can change with your lifestyle. My intervention should empower you to manage your stress and do things that are very anti-inflammatory, meaning setting clear boundaries, avoiding the things that are stressful to you, even if it includes the closest people around you. And then, of course, anti inflammatory diet and targeted physical movements like yoga to mitigate the multifaceted impacts of interacting components and pathways. As always, it's pivotal that any approach are aligned with your body and mind, as well as it's something you can wrap your head around. It's something you want to do and enjoy. Remember, this is like a broad overview of the hormones. I just wanted you to understand the complexities. It's never just one hormone. And most of the women go out and get hormone replacements. Of course, when you're hormonally imbalanced, even if thyroid is a little off, even if the cortisol is a little high, due to its integrated interplay in the hormonal system, the whole endocrine system, not involving just the female sex hormones, but everything else, that when you do add bioidenticals, you may be offsetting and creating further imbalances that need exogenous input, that means outside in approach, to constantly seek help from outside of you. And in reality, you have all the regulatory mechanisms within you to control through the practice of yoga and meditation, as well as mindfulness. If you need help here, please contact us at info@functional yoga medicine. I'd be happy to help you with weight loss goals. I'm also a functional medicine practitioner and a registered dietitian and a physical therapist. So I have a very unique approach, and I tie everything together, integrate it through yoga. That's why we call ourselves functional yoga medicine. So I hope you enjoyed this episode and it gave you a lot of insights. I'll see you guys all later.
Thank you for listening to the Mind Your Health podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, we would so much love it and appreciate it if you share it with someone who could benefit as well as to subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else where podcasts are found, and leave us a review. We would be so grateful, and it helps us to reach more people just like you, so you can become more empowered to enjoy longevity and health. You can follow me on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at Dr. Connie Chung. And of course, you can subscribe to this podcast for a new episode every single week. Thank